Hello everyone, welcome to PHTV Channel 4 in Palos Heights. I'm Sue Jankowski, and on our program today we have Dr. Dawn Green, who is the new superintendent of School District 128. Welcome to the program today. Dawn, it's nice to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, this Dawn comes to our community new. She's been a superintendent before. But before we get into your educational history, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your family so we know just a little bit about you.
Okay. A little bit about myself. I come from northwest of Peoria, and that's where a lot of my family still lives. My grandparents in their 90s are still there, and my parents and everybody, so we're back there a lot. But I have 6 children, 2 twin boys that are still in high school, juniors in high school. Our other ones have graduated and gone, and we lost one of our children to a car accident approximately 2 years ago, so that's still very much on everyone's mind.
Of course, yes.
And it's how to learn to live life
and continue
to the fullest with that loss. But it certainly made me appreciate the things that I have and not worry about the things that I don't have and those types of things. So my family, I've got a daughter that's getting married in a month,
wow.
So that's great.
That is exciting.
I have a sister that teaches out in Colorado. I have a brother that was a first grade teacher for many, many years, and he kind of prompted my son to go into education, elementary education, and now he's a 4th grade teacher down in East Central Illinois around the Danville area.
Okay.
And my husband is a middle school principal in Bloomington Normal.
So education really runs through the family.
Education runs big in our family.
Okay. So out of your children, just the one son is in education at this point.
True, so far. But, you know, a lot of times, even as he went to University of Illinois, even as he was going through, a lot of people would be like, oh my gosh, why are you allowing him to go into education? And my feeling is 100% the opposite. I would encourage all my children to go into education. I still, I know there's a lot of negative out there right now on things, but I would still strongly encourage anyone to go into education. I just think it's the best profession that is out there.
Well, it is a profession that is very, very rewarding. And if you're looking for a job that makes you feel like you're making a difference in the world, education is certainly, the place for you, because it does. You are impacting children constantly, and it's a great job. So, okay, you've got a big family, and you've got. I'm amazed that you have grandparents. That's a wonderful thing.
Yep.
You're so fortunate. So you started out now you're passionate about education. You're very well educated, of course. And what brought you into that to start with? What made you feel like this is what you wanted to do?
My mom loved history, and she kind of instilled a interest in history in me, and so all through, high school, I was taking, back then in the 80s it wasn't online, or late 70s, early 80s it wasn't online, but I was taking, independent study courses with the history teacher, and I just loved anything to do with history. So I knew, I think from an early age, that I wanted to be a history teacher. So I went in, I was a history teacher at Bradley Bourbonnais, is where I got my first job. I went to Eastern Illinois University undergrad, but through circumstances, I ended up only teaching for 6 years, and it's just kind of, I don't want to say being in the right place at the right time, because at the time, and even today, I don't think that's necessarily true. I just happened to have my administrative certificate because I wanted to be an athletic director. I love sports, and I was really involved in coaching, and I wanted to be an athletic director, so I knew you had to have your Type 75. And where I was teaching at the time was Bloomington High School in Bloomington, Illinois, and they needed an assistant principal. And they saw that I had my degree, my administrative certificate, and they said, hey, will you want to interview for the assistant principal's job? So it's overnight I went from being this, beloved history teacher and coach to not so beloved assistant principal who was doling out the discipline.
Right, exactly, and that put you in a different spot, right?
Exactly. So that was the beginning.
How did you feel about that? That's a hard transition because you have this great rapport with your students, and you're teaching something you love, and now you're a little bit the bad guy, right?
Yes, absolutely. This was. Bloomington High School in the early 90s, and wow, it was tough. It really was. Luckily I had a great board member that I became friends with, and she kept saying to me all the time, every time she'd see me, she'd be like, it's the position, not the person. It's the position, not the person. And she would remind me that it wasn't about me. It was the role that I was doing. But by doing that role, I was making the school a better place, better for learning and that type of thing. So,
Well, that was good. That was helpful.
she was awesome. She was
Yes.
wonderful. I couldn't have done it. So it was hard, though, to
It
do
is
that.
hard. Okay, so then you were assistant principal for a while, and then you decided that you go on. You kind of adapted to that administrative role, and you wanted to continue in it.
Yes. So I was an assistant principal there at Bloomington High School. Then I left and went to Unit 5 schools, which is kind of, if you're familiar with the Bloomington Normal area, it's kind of like Bloomington's like the center of the donut, and Unit 5 Normal, it surrounds it. It's like the bigger, much bigger school district. And so I went to Unit 5, and I was assistant principal there. I got a unique opportunity to open up a brand new high school.
That is
And
exciting.
that, you just don't get to do that very
No.
often. So we were picking staff, I mean, we all came in together. And this was in 1995. And the staff and the students were just fabulous. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. But, I was in that assistant principal role, for a while, for a number of years. And finally, I became an associate principal, which is more scheduling and dealing with teachers. Then I went on to be a middle school principal. And then I left there to go to the district office. I was director of curriculum, and then I was director of human resources. And after that, I said, you know what? I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready to be a superintendent. And so then I looked for a superintendency, and I got a job in Salmonock, Illinois. And at the time, I didn't know where that was.
I'm not sure where it is either.
And even now, you don't. And even now, you don't know where it is. If you go out west on 34, like past Oswego, Yorkville, Plano, Sandwich.
Okay.
Salmonock is the very next town. I mean,
Okay,
literally,
I
you
know where
drive
that
out of
is.
Sandwich into Salmonock.
All
So it's a
right.
beautiful little community, great board support and families and kids. I loved it. It was good. But it was a drive from where I lived, and just with everything happening personally in my life, I was ready for a change.
Yeah, exactly. So then there came an opening in the Palos Heights area, and you thought, you could kind of bring it on in and make that change at that time.
Right. It wasn't like I was looking, but actually the high school that my boys go to, the principal saw my husband at a football game, and she said, hey, I know about a job that Dawn might be interested in. And Palos Heights did their own search. They didn't hire a search firm, so it's not like you would really see it out there unless you were really looking. And so I kind of investigated, and I talked to Dr. Casey, the former superintendent, and her words just resonated with me. She said, anybody who would get this job would be so fortunate. It's a great place.
Isn't that
it's
nice?
a great place. And I thought,
That
wow,
sounds good.
that sounds like
She's
something I'd
leaving,
like.
And she's leaving not because it was something she didn't like. It was something.
No, she was retiring.
just
She'd
ready to
actually
retire.
already retired. I mean, she loved the place so much that she had retired the year before and had come back as an interim
While they found
superintendent.
a replacement.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a great place.
Okay, well that's good. Okay, so now here you are, starting anew again, because now you've done this a few times. So but it's getting easier, I'm sure, to step in somewhere new. But now this is it larger than where you were?
No, it's actually a
About
little
the same?
smaller. It's
Okay.
actually a little smaller. That everywhere I've ever been prior to here was a unit district. So you also had a high school.
Oh,
So I also
right.
had that high school piece. So this is very unique for me. It's not unique for the area at all, but very common for the suburbs. But so it's about the same size. I think when I first got to Salmonock, we had about 1,000 students. But over the last 4 years, some of those smaller towns out there in the middle of nowhere with not a lot of job opportunities or close to things, we were
Population is
losing.
dwindling,
The population
right.
is dwindling for sure. So we were down under 800 by the time I left. So similar in size, but without the high school.
Okay.
So we don't have the not having the high school. So that was that was a little bit for me too. My boys. My youngest at home are juniors, and they're very involved in activities, and I really wanted to see them at their events, and a lot of what they do is up here in this area, so it's perfect. I can stay at work and then
over
zoom to a
there.
basketball game.
That's great.
So that was part of my piece too. for
Rationale
everything.
too. So when you get to the district and you're kind of looking at the picture there, what are you seeing? Are you seeing like certain things that are, I'm sure, going along great, or there's also pieces that you can bring to it that make some nice changes? What was your first evaluation of the place?
My first evaluation, and I'm not lying when I say this, I mean, it's great. It really is a great place. Dr. Casey was absolutely right on the money. I mean, we are so fortunate to have such a wonderful school system here, and locally around us there's other great school systems, but it's been great. I think coming into my first superintendency at Salmonock, I was just looking to learn, you know, and again, it's like here, you're everything. You're the business manager, you're the HR, you're the curriculum. There was none of those extra people. So you wear many, many hats. And so I felt like I was just on that learning curve for quite a while. Here, coming in, having that experience, and having a little bit more support, I do have a business manager here, and some curriculum help. Having that support and knowing the job more, it's like I can come in like, okay, I see that. It's great, it's good, but can we make it even better? And so you come in at it with a fresh eye, and but you got to be careful. You don't want anybody to think what they were doing was wrong, because it's not. It's not wrong.
Right.
It's wonderful. I could slide in and
And
make very little change.
Status quo.
But there's little things here and there,
Sure.
you know.
Tweak.
The middle school principal, his wife had a baby at the very start of the school year, so I kind of stepped in and was the principal there for the first few days. And, so things I'm noticing, how the buses and cars come in, have we looked at something different for, pick up and drop off and that type of thing. So something that is very routine for people. When you come in differently, you look at it like, oh, well, why do you do it this way?
Right.
And sometimes there's a very good reason why they do it that
Right.
way. Well, we tried it this way before and it didn't work.
Right.
But sometimes you can bring in some new ideas as well.
Yeah,
So.
and having some fresh ideas to make things maybe just a little smoother or better. With education right now, too, I feel like we're in this huge flux of everyone trying to, make their curriculum better and have all these standards and goals, and there's so much pressure for everyone, teachers, principals, superintendents, parents, and students. I mean, I just feel like this is a challenging time in education.
You are right.
So how are you addressing all of this? I mean, I feel like it would be very stressful for you and your staff.
I think it is exactly all those things that you mentioned. That is what's happening in education today, and it's not a bad thing though. I'm looking at it very positively. I am. I'm definitely one of these positive people that looks at everything. The glass is half full, and I know not everyone looks at it that way. But I'm looking at it as this is an opportunity for us to grow and learn and do better. And some of those things that we've done in the past, I'm not saying they were wrong. They were okay for the job skills and the education, that kids needed, that students needed when they went into college or career. But now what they're telling us is we're not getting it done. We're not getting them ready. A lot of kids are having to, take a math course in high school that's non-credit bearing, to get up to standards. So then that tells us, oh, we need to maybe push down a little bit more and amp up what we're doing in junior high and high school. But to do that, you have to amp it up all the way through, which is really what. And I'm just going to call them the Illinois Learning Standards, because they are our Illinois Learning Standards. I know people like to interchange Common Core and the Illinois Learning Standards together, but we've always had standards.
Right.
These are just new standards that are a lot more rigorous, and they start that rigor in kindergarten and get it all the way through. Eventually, it's going to be great. But right now, we're still trying to play catch up. We're still trying to go deep. And that's the whole difference, with these learning standards is you're covering less material, but you're going deeper on the material that you're covering, and not so wide. We don't need to know so much at just this level. We need to know this much, but at a very deep level. So it takes a lot of time, really time more than anything. And you said it too, the parents are affected. They are. I mean, they started being affected when our oldest kids were in elementary school, and they came home with everyday math, and it's like,
and the parents are like, I don't know what to do.
What's this type of, why can't you just do it this way to multiply and divide? But you know what? There's a reason. The reason is it's not about memorization. It's not about remember the steps and then you can get the answer. And you don't know really why it's that answer. You just remember these are the steps to get there and here's my answer.
Right.
Now it's about why. Why are you doing what you're doing? If you don't even get to the answer right now, we're okay with that, but we don't want you to give up. We want you to stay at it. And I look at my own kids and their fear of math and myself, you know, and like, oops, that's a problem I can't do. I mean, I would immediately just look at it and be like, oops, no, can't do that. And that's kind of the way they have been too. And now we're trying to train our children to say, I can do any of them. Let me pull it apart. Let me take my time. Let me problem solve. Let me persevere. Let me get frustrated. And as a parent, that's hard. It's hard to sit and watch your kid at the table get so frustrated because they can't figure out the answer.
Right.
But figuring out the answer is less important than that perseverance, than the process, the problem solving. And that's a change. That's a change. It's not a knock on anybody. I truly, wholeheartedly believe that it's the right thing. But anytime there's a change, it comes with, it's uncomfortable for us.
It is. And it's uncomfortable for parents because the child comes home, and as it is, you know, working with your child at home doing homework isn't always a fun time for the family. And then when you really cannot help them because you don't actually understand the process, I think that's the frustration of parents. They're like, well, I don't know what to do to help you. You just have to figure it out for yourself.
Right.
And really, it is homework. It's theirs.
Right. That's right. You just said it. You just said it.
So
I mean, it's not theirs.
Right.
It's not theirs to do and to help them. You know, I think how they can help them is to, you know, make them sit and try to work it out, and in a reasonable amount of time. You know, if they don't get it, and my feedback from teachers is if they work on something and they try a variety of different steps that we've talked about or methods or thought about things for a while and they still can't get it, it's okay, just then move on and say to the teacher, you know, here's what I did, here's the things I did, I still couldn't get to where I needed to go. That's what, as educators, we need to know. We don't need to know, oops, look, they brought the paper back in, it's all done. Now, did Johnny do it or mom? You know, because I was guilty of that too.
Right.
You know, I walk by, they're doing something, oh, well, my gosh, it's I before E, you know, except after C, again. You know, so.
Yes, we're
all guilty of it.
We do, we want to help them. And so that process is a little bit more out of our hands, which is probably a good thing. It is their homework, and we're just providing the support at home, not the answers. Right. So, and it's good to know for parents that teachers aren't really too worked up about them not coming back with the right answer. In most cases, it's the effort, you know, that they've put into something, and I think that's important for them to remember too.
That's right.
Well, would you say? I mean, we're talking about obstacles in education. Like, is that a tremendous obstacle? This whole, you know, this people think that Common Core is like, you know, they're not really excited about it.
I know.
And so they're like, oh, Common Core, it's so horrible, it's so difficult. Whereas you mentioned we always did have standards that we are following, and now they've just changed a little bit. So is that one of the biggest obstacles now, is just getting people's mind wrapped around, you know, a new feeling about what's expected of their student?
I think so. Yeah. I think so. And it's not just the parents or the kids. I mean, it's teachers, it's administrators, it's the community, it's everybody. Because, you know, most teachers went to school, they weren't taught this way either.
No.
And, you know, I certainly will admit that when, you know, I first started teaching, you know, I had a history book and I flipped that page and I kept going, you know, right through the book. That's what I did. Now, I had all those other classes to learn different things, but really, I was following that book. That book was my curriculum. We don't have that anymore. We really don't have a set curriculum that you just follow. You're pulling resources from everywhere. And is this rigorous enough? Is this going to get them what I want them to know? And the whole vocabulary is different. It's amazing. It's wonderful. It's great, but it's uncomfortable for people. And teachers need time. They need time to develop this curriculum. Most teachers, they didn't go to school to become curriculum writers. But you can't buy a program out there and just say, oh, here's our program. This is what we're going to use. It doesn't exist right now. Now, maybe 5 years from now it will exist, but right now it doesn't. So they're piecing together. And I've just met with fourth grade teachers at the end of yesterday talking about science curriculum. Now they came out with next generation science standards. okay, where are we at with our science and what we're doing? And with the learning standards, math and language arts, that's where it's at. That's kind of the overall, big picture. But where does social studies, where does science, where do some of these other things fit in? And so, what are we doing with science? Where are we teaching that? What place does it have? And what are we using to help teach those next generation science standards?
Well, there's so much that needs to be done. The day is never long enough.
Right.
And there's so many expectations that need to be met for teachers that I know that they have a hard time getting it all fit into the day, particularly when the language and math programs have really expanded so much that it takes up a huge part of the day, especially in elementary school.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. It's changed dramatically. And one of the things that we did, and we're kind of late jumping on this bandwagon, but still, it's uncomfortable for people and it's difficult, but when I started in July, they'd already made this decision. I was at a board meeting late in the year when they'd made this decision, but I don't think, as there's transition from one person to the next, kind of waiting, we'll wait till Dr. Green starts and we'll kind of get going on this. But we do have so many days during the year that the kids are out an hour and a half early, and they're called professional learning communities, where the teachers are meeting in their community. So all fourth grade teachers, all social studies teachers at the middle school, all language arts teachers at the middle school, things like that. They're meeting in their professional learning communities to talk about curriculum, looking at data and looking at their curriculum. We've never done that before. We've never set aside specific time that can only be devoted to curriculum. It's not planning. It's not, hey, will you make the parent permission slips for the field trip? Hey, will you, lead them in the pledge this week? Hey, will you? No, it's not about planning. It's about really looking at our curriculum and saying, is what we have here, is what we're doing the best? Is it, teaching them what we want them to learn? So we're always looking at that teaching and learning process. We never did that before. I mean, there wasn't that much emphasis on it. If a teacher wanted to spend, and hey, guilty, I loved World War II. I spent weeks on this awesome World War II project. But now we can't do that. We can't just pick pet projects. There's we've got to go pretty deep, and we got to get our kids here at the end of third grade so they're ready to start here for fourth grade and that type of thing. So these devoted days. And so it was kind of the first thing that happened when I started. So, understandably so, there were some parents that were upset because, now their child's out at 1:30 on these days, and there's childcare issues.
Right.
So, bad on our part that we, didn't do a better job of getting that information out sooner, and we're gonna work on that for next year, what it's gonna be like. If there'll be as many days, if there'll be late starts. I know the high school district does late starts instead of early outs. We'll look at it all. We're going to have a committee that's going to involve parents and get their input on that. And you're never going to make everybody happy, but I feel like now more than ever we need this time. Teachers need this time to hone their craft. And as I tell board, as I tell parents, if we had those days back, those hour and a half, so if you add up the hour and a half, and then we have some half days and we have some school improvement days, those have always existed. If we had those days back and those times with the kids, that's great. That's more time with the kids. Not that I'm opposed to that, but if we're not teaching what we need to be teaching, it's lost instruction time. We're going to be better off by taking the time to do this work. And I just told the fourth grade that yesterday as they were working on science. I said, hey, I know no one wants to leave their classroom, and I love that about them. I love that about the teachers. They don't want to leave their classroom. They don't want to have a sub. They want to be the ones with the kids. But I said, if you need time to take a day and sit down with this, science curriculum and determine, what are going to be the standards that we want to cover in fourth grade or seventh grade, then we're going to have to do that. That's more valuable.
It really is, and I think it's hard to understand maybe, or if people think about it, they'll realize that it's one of the few jobs where actually you have no interaction with your coworkers, because you're isolated in a room, focused on the students. So there are no times where you can actually interact with people except maybe during lunch.
Right.
And there is a lot of interaction, at that lunchtime. But there's no time where you can actually get together and really kind of brainstorm and think out and write curriculum and really focus on those things if you're not provided those opportunities. So it is inconvenient for parents, I understand that, but on the other hand, it promotes their child's education. So they have to.
And like I said, school districts have been doing this for a long time. You know, we're kind of just getting on that bandwagon, and we need to. Our teachers were giving up their lunches. They were meeting during their lunchtime. They were, coming in early. They were staying late. They were coming in on the weekends, and that's great. They are in a profession, and they're always going to do that. They're a professional, but it only makes sense that we give them some time too, some focused time where we can. Administrators can be in there talking about it, that they can have easy access to their resources, really look at data, look at, how did your students do on this assessment? Oh my gosh, mine did terrible on this question. Yours all got it. So what did you do? We never took the time to do that. It was close your door and you teach.
Right, exactly. So that, exchange of ideas is really, really important. What are your long-term, long-range goals for the district that you see right now?
I came into this district, and financially they're in good shape. They've been great stewards of the resources.
That's
the district
amazing because there's so many that are not.
I know,
that's great.
I know, it really is. They've done a great job with that, and I attribute a lot of that to Dr. Casey. She did a great job with the finances. But we are in a different world now, and the amount of tax money coming in and costs for things, it's about even, and so what's that going to look like in the future as potential changes come about with our state budget, So that's, of course, on my mind, something to be considering. I know one area that we're looking at is transportation. We have been overspending in transportation. I mean, what you used to get compared to what you get now is night and day difference. Yeah. And we provide a lot of good services for our families for transportation, and that's good, but it comes at a cost, and we can't continue to do that. I mean, the reserves simply aren't there. So I've got a transportation committee. I've got names of several parents who are interested in serving on it, and some board members, and we're going to get started on that in October. So we're going to come up with some ideas on how we can reduce our costs in transportation. So that's one thing. But probably big overarching goals is how we can make our district the best in the area, how we can make it the best. One district that I know up around more closer to the city, I know that their goal is always to be in the top 25% of school districts in the state. I would say, I'd like our goal to be even much higher than that. And I say it starts with that curriculum. We've really got to look back. We've got great kids. And we've got great parent support. So our kids do well, but could they be doing even better? Wherever they go, whether it's to Shepherd High School or somewhere else, could they be doing even better? And we've got to do that. So I think our big focus is to look at our curriculum, to take really a deep look at our curriculum and make those changes. And they're tough, but we're doing it. So.
Well, change is always difficult. Even when you mention, you have to watch the finances, and transportation is a big one. That's going to hurt because they're used to a certain way, and when you cut back on things, that always is more difficult. So when you're tweaking a curriculum too, it's just it's a growing and learning process that changes. Good and hard.
Right. I for years I've been telling people, in 2011 we were really starting to go with Common Core or the Illinois Learning Standards. I was telling people, well, do you have the same phone that you had? Do you have the same television that you had?
Right.
I mean, everything is changing. And so we need to change too. And it's not a bad thing. We can't look at it as a bad thing.
Well, when you look at today what kids can find out just on the computer, that we had to spend, hours and hours in the library looking up and the card catalog and all that. I mean, those are things they don't even know what that is. You just find out the information. So we have to work with that great asset that they have and help them move forward with
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out. I know your schedule is very busy.
Thank
but
you.
It was nice to meet you, and I think the community it's nice for the community to meet the head of the district of 128, that's Dr. Green, and we really wish you the best. We hope you enjoy working in our community.
I absolutely will. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on.
And thanks for watching us today. Bye-bye.